What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring you everything fresh in entertainment. I'm your host, as always, Drew Brumfield, and we are here doing a very interesting topic with a very interesting guest. But we are talking about probably one of, at least my favorite anime ever, and that's Cowboy Bebop. Today, I am joined again with Robert. How are you doing?
Oh yeah, this is happening.
All right, we're going to ignore that little inside joke. And with a special guest, Becca. Becca, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. I was expecting another Amy reference as well. But we're not gonna give light to that situation. So, but yes, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking about Cowboy Bebop. Arguably one of the greatest anime created. Very short anime, but definitely had a huge lasting impact on not only anime in general, but also especially bringing it to the West and introducing it to a lot of people in America. It's
Yeah,
probably
like
I was gonna say it's probably what got me really into it. But Robert, what were you gonna say?
yeah, it's pretty much one of the big contributors to anime's popularity in the West.
It started that train started with the movie Akira, but really took off after
Yeah,
Pop, and it's
yeah,
still
what helped with Bebop was just how much effort they put into the English dub,
yeah.
because oftentimes before Bebop, anime was pretty infamous for having awful dubbing, and that's something that Bebop pretty much changed. And it's a lot of people's the only way a lot of people will watch Bebop is through the English dub.
I would say yeah, we'll definitely talk about the English dub later on because I have a bunch of notes about that. But starting off, Becca, what are kind of for you? What are just kind of some general thoughts and how were you first introduced to Cowboy Bebop?
I was first introduced to Cowboy Bebop from one of my friends. I would say this was probably back in 2012 or so. Um, I got a lot of anime recommendations. It kind of put it on the backlog.
Yeah.
The first time I ever saw an episode of Cowboy Bebop was actually when I was staying in a hotel and it was on Adult Swim.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I don't remember what episode it was, but I wouldn't watch it until last year, 2022, with Robert, of course.
Ye-
Man. Well, Rob, what about you? How did you get introduced to it then?
So it's pretty much one of those. If you look at any anime stuff online, someone's gonna bring up Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
If it's this is an anime you should watch. So it kind of got on my radar. So I tried watching it my first semester of college. I was like, all right, I want to try this, and then I got a few episodes in, and then I guess I got busy or something, and then just kind of put it down. I wasn't I thought it was good, but it wasn't it didn't draw me in. I tried rewatching it again a couple years later, and still kind of the same thing. And then when Becca wanted to watch it, we watched it together. That's when it kind of clicked with me. Um, and I kind of understood more of what that show was trying to do, because the way I was trying to look at the show wasn't really how it was meant to be watched, which was I was thinking it was about the main characters and their storyline, but that's not entirely true, how you're supposed to watch it, because it's a very episodic anime.
Yeah.
Like aside from a few episodes, there's pretty much not a big overarching story. So it feels a little jumbled, but it's not really about the main character's plot. It's about them kind of being wrapped up in everybody else's goings on in the world.
Yeah. It's more of it's it's more like we're watching just a very small chapter of these people's story. And I'm glad you kind of brought up and we might bring this up at the towards the ending, but just because you are brought this up, what makes this show really well is that it is very episodic, and it's just like these people just living daily lives. It's almost like a slice of life anime, except it's about guns and mercenaries and bounty hunters. But that's not really what draws people in, and it's very Eastern storytelling where like there really isn't that much of a beginning, middle, and end. Like it's not like a hero's journey like we're used to. It's more of just like this is just a moment in people's lives that we're getting to be shown. And that's one of the things that recently they did a live action version of this series. Talk
Uh,
about yes, and that is what it does not do correctly. We will talk about that a lot, but it was one of my main issues with the live action series because I remember like when the first episode came, I was like, okay, this actually looks pretty good. I like the main character for both Jet and Spike; they're pretty interesting. But what really just messed is like they tried to make it a continuing plot about the mob and this thing happening with Spike, and every episode was connected in a way, and that's not what Cowboy Bebop is. Cowboy
No.
Bebop has like the beginning, middle, and end of story is each episode. You can watch the show in whatever order as long as the first episode's first and the last episode's last. It doesn't,
Yeah.
for the most part, it doesn't really matter because it's just a day in these people's lives, and they're very interesting people to watch, and that's the hook of the show is these four characters.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I was reading this interview that someone did with Shinichiro Watanabe, the creator of Cowboy Bebop. They asked him what his thoughts of the live action version were, and he said that he watched the opening scene of the casino and then he couldn't watch anymore. It was too hard for him to watch. He's like, "This isn't Cowboy Bebop."
yeah,
So when the creator is even like, "Yeah, this adaptation shit," then that's saying something.
it's amazing that he was not even. They didn't even like ask him to like, hey, do you want to be part in like making this? Or maybe if they even did, he was just like, no, I already made like the like the best version, so it won't matter. Uh,
Yeah, he said that it pretty much since the live action version exists, he thinks that it gives the original version even more value.
that's like, I guess that's the one good thing to come out of it.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? Go watch the other one that came out like in the late 90s.
Yeah, it's still looking at.
all I've really seen is one clip, which I can't even remember what clip it was, and the intro. Oh my god. Nothing will ever top the original intro.
Yeah,
Like, just the fact that they tried to remake it in like a live action format. Like, I appreciate the effort, but it looks really silly.
the one thing I will give them credit for, and it's because it's the exact same thing. I like the opening theme, but that's just because it's the same opening theme. It's
It's
just different.
Tank.
It's Tank, and Tank is such a good. We're gonna talk about the intro now because this also episode is gonna be all over the place. I'm sorry, but there's a lot in this show, and every time like I mention a small aspect, I'm like, oh shoot, I want to talk about that now. But Tank is such a vibe. Tank is so different because most anime openings are like big angelic scores or everything's moving fast and bang bang shooting whatever angels Gundam whatever. Yeah, I mean especially during like the 90s era. But this was such a different vibe from most anime. It was a James Bond style opening, and with jazz and like instrument. It was all instrumentals, and that opening voice line. So I want to play the clip, but this will definitely get taken down if I do that. Uh, it's such a it's and it just fits like the whole vibe of the show. Like I've rewatched this series twice now. Like my initial viewing, and then I rewatched it again because I'm like, oh, the live action came out. It gives me a reason to rewatch it. Might do it a third time, but every single time I play an episode, I will never skip this opening. It's a short opening, but it's one of my favorite like just openings to any anime.
Yeah.
Um,
It leaves a very lasting impression. Like its style and direction is so strong, you can't help but watch it.
yeah, and it stands out so much. Like
Yeah.
from anything else that like was made. Becca, what are your kind of thoughts on uh the opening?
On the opening, well, it's for sure very stylish,
Yeah.
and like you said, it's a very different vibe compared to a lot of anime openings. Um, I'm the same way. I don't like to skip it. Robert
Yeah.
would sometimes, and I would think to myself, "Oh God, why would you do that?"
Skip Tank? What the heck?
It's because we
Oh,
would watch like 3 or 4 episodes in a session.
and you should watch Tank 3 or 4 times then.
You know what? You're
Oh,
right. I'm sorry.
I should kick you off this Discord call. Gosh dang it. He skipped Tank. I Tank is one of the songs. I have like a little playlist on Spotify of just like my favorite movies and themes, and Tank is like there are very few anime openings on there. It's Tank and then a few of the Attack on Titan openings. Is like the only ones on there.
Yeah. It's like what I like a lot about Tank is that it doesn't use like footage from like, episodes. It's all original animation. It does kind of highlight like some of the characters' personalities a bit, even of just like moving silhouettes.
Yeah.
Because you see like Spike trying to like dodge bullets and run away, or you get like Edward doing like her little arm movement.
I've always
Like
loved that
it
animation of like the arms and the
it's
fingers all waving at nothing.
yeah, it's like this weird movement, but it fits her so well, and it pretty much just shows her character all in that. Like all the stylization choices they did for Tank are pretty much timeless. Like it it still holds up to this day as one of the best openings to like any show ever.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Gosh, I could talk about just Tank for another like couple of hours, but there is a show that comes after the opening that I guess I should talk about. And before we'll go like character by character. I will. But I do want to kind of just talk about the world building of this show real quick, and the fact that there aren't many like worlds like Cowboy Bebop. Obviously, like the show was made in like the 90s. It's very clear and crisp 90s animation, which I'm always a big fan of. But it's a 90s anime that kind of pseudo like it's in the future, quote unquote, but it's also like it never goes super like Star Wars or Star Trek where like oh people are teleporting everywhere, people wear space things, people have laser guns. No, everyone uses like actual handgun, and their technology and everything is at the same time futuristic and retro at the same time. It's a very interesting style where they're still using, they have spaceships, but all the spaceships have like dial-up radios in them and stuff like
Yeah.
Yeah,
that.
like even like a lot of the ships and stuff are very like beat up. They barely work. Like the Bebop is just like a fishing boat that they like pretty much made a spaceship.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
yeah, one thing I like really enjoy about the world building is like, like even though that like for the most part there isn't an overarching plot, it's just nice to be thrust into that world because it's such an interesting like style choice between futuristic and retro at the same time.
and there's so few like shows nowadays where like when it's sci-fi technically, it's set in the future that kind of go for this style. I remember a few episodes back, me and Seth were talking about Deathloop, and that's another one where it kind of has like, yes, it's in the future, but everything still has like kind of an 80s or 90s aesthetic to it. And we both were like, this is very Cowboy Bebop. So if you're, I like this era, and I hope more people take inspiration from this world. I was about to say like I hope we see more from this world, but I'll get to what because I don't want to talk about the ending yet. We will, but I've kind of probably seen enough from it, and every new adaptation comes out as terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's only been like one attempt of an adaptation for the live action, didn't go well. It's like the 26 episodes in the movie, that was plenty.
yeah, and it just fits so perfectly. But we'll talk about episodes and length and endings in a little bit. Let's talk about. Let's start with the big elephant in the room, and as Robert mentioned earlier, this show really like changed how audience watched anime. It was the first anime to be like, no, let's actually like lip sync the characters to the dub, and then also like put a lot of effort into the English dub of this. You ask anyone, and they will tell you there are a few people who are like die hard, like I only watch sub, I only watch it in its original content. Yet they will still watch Bebop in the dub because it is just that much better. And a
Yeah.
lot of that mainly has to do with the man who you've heard a million times before, but that is Steve Blum, aka in this show Spike Spiegel, the main character. And I've been talking for a minute, so I'll let you guys. Robert, what are your kind of thoughts about our main character Spike and his voice actor?
Yeah, I pretty much think that Steve Bloom pretty much just is Spike Spiegel.
Yeah,
Like, I've heard him first as other roles, but his performance as Spike is so believable that you really think he is the character. Because he's like kind of this carefree guy, really kind of stuck in the past, but he's very like nonchalant about a lot of things. But at the same time, he does care about people. He just doesn't really like to show it. But yeah, see, is like God, I'm trying to find like a good word to really describe him.
the best way I could do it, and we always make this joke before the podcast, of we try to avoid just saying, "Oh, blank is cool," and then moving on. But that's just what he is. Spike is cool, and
But he's also like very human.
he is, but he's just so like it's hard for me to describe him as well because he is just so cool. Everything he does has style. Everything he does is like very fluid in movement. He even when he messes up, like he doesn't win every fight he's in. He's not always serious every single time. He can be goofy at moments. But at no point are you ever like, do you ever feel like he's a comic relief or something like that? No, he always like has this very like distinct character about him. It's like, yeah, everything will probably work itself out.
Yeah, because he pretty much has like this "I'm not afraid of anything" kind
Right.
of vibe. Like, oh, dying, and not that's not me.
That's for lame people, which I think makes it so intensive. Whenever there are moments when he actually does get serious, which are few and far between, but when he actually does get serious, I'm like, all right, enough of this. There's a slight tone, and that's when like shit is real, stuff is going down because even the cool leg bad guy is like, I'm not joking anymore. I'm like
hmm
his little smirk is gone. Um, Becca, what are your thoughts about our main character, Spike?
Well, he's obviously husbando material. Okay, okay.
This is fun. Normally we have Randy on the podcast who says stuff like that. But I mean, same vein. So if he was here, he probably
but
agree with you.
but but no, he poor like me for real, for real. Okay, seriously though, he is
That was my joke
he is
earlier. I'm too
he
off our
is
topic.
awesome. He is so cool. Like whether he's serious or whether he's being goofy, he is the main reason why like I kept wanting to watch more Cowboy Bebop. Like I love the whole cast, don't get me wrong, but he is easily Spike Spiegel's easily my favorite.
Oh yeah, of course. I completely agree. I always have that thing where like, and I call it like the hipster gene sound. Where like, I don't ever want my favorite character to just be, oh, it's the main character. But with Bebop, like, there's no way it can't be Spike. Like, it's always going to be him. The other characters are fine; they're cool. Uh, but Spike is like he makes the show for this. So I completely agree. Yes, he's my favorite character as well. Oh my gosh. But yeah. And I think also like what Robert says is true as well. This Steve Blum is, you've heard him in like a bunch of other things. He's been in X-Men cartoons. He was in Mass Effect. He's been in a lot of projects. Like his career blew up, and he's a very talented voice actor. But like when you hear his voice in real life, it's very much like, yeah, he's Spike. He's just, that's just what his voice is. And there really can't be anyone else to do like Spike's voice. It very much like blew his career up, and it's pretty much like his main identity. I guess his main like character he'll fall back on is Spike Spiegel. So
And I remember reading something where it's like Shinichiro Watanabe even says that he prefers watching the dub of Bebop. Like it's so good,
yeah.
even the creators, like I take the dub over sub.
And that man is
Or native
Japanese.
language in his case.
He's a Japanese man who English is his second language, or at least second, and he still prefers hearing it in English. That's a very impressive feat right there. But yeah, also another main character trait, that my joke was stolen. He's poor, as like everyone else in the crew is. He's poor, and I love the fact that at random you'll just see him eating random things, and smoking a lot. And I was the thing is like, yeah, he's not doing that to. Well, he's probably smoking to try to look cool, but like, he's not doing that just to be weird or cool. He's just hungry. The man is broke like me, for real, for real.
He's even eating a cigarette after smoking it.
Yeah, which is incredibly. That's like the speed running of cancer right there. That's how you do that.
He's trying to get his values worth, is what he's doing.
He is hungry.
He's trying to get his money.
Yeah, but he's not eating a lot. Because the other character we're gonna be talking about isn't doing a good job making his food. That's what we call a transition, people. Because we're talking about Jet. You guys are. That's a Becca, you're new to the podcast, so one of my favorite bits as well is making a good transition and then stopping that myself mid-transition to point out that I made a good transition, thus ruining the transition. This is called an ongoing gag. Anyway, Jet Black, the technical owner of the Bebop, which is their home slash ship, voiced by Bayu, and I'm gonna say this wrong, Bill Bingsley. Bill in G
Billingsley?
Bingsley. I don't know. He's a veteran though, and he's cool. But Jet is a very like ground to earth. He's a former cop, and he has a very deep and like big voice. Like he is supposed to be like a bigger character and kind of like the moral compass of the group. You know, he's the one that tries to find jobs. He tries to feed him. He tries to like take care of the group. Despite Spike being the main character, he is really like, I guess, the parent of the group.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in my little notes, was that he feels like the dad.
He very much is the dad. Who is also, still, despite being a bigger guy and like a big crunch, he's one of his hobbies is gardening and making very healthy meals. So I feel like I can say he's dad material as well.
Yeah.
He's dad material.
He's male wife material.
Yeah, okay. If Randy was male wife material, that's a better way of saying it than how I was about to say it. So yeah, we'll just go with that. But Beck, what are your kind of thoughts on Jet Black?
Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts.
No, you're good. You keep thinking of like more dad jokes or male wife jokes. Well, while she's gathering thought, Robert, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like, well, you guys have Spike as your favorite. I feel like Jet's kind of my favorite of the group, just because of like, I really like him being kind of the moral compass of the group and kind of the one everyone could sort of turn to. He very much does kind of fit the dad role, especially for like Edward. Like he kind of takes on the role of like a surrogate parent to her. He's definitely very close with Spike. Because they've pretty much been traveling together on and off even since before the series began, since they're your initial two characters, and they really feel like they have a lot of history together. And he just has a lot of history to him in general, because, like you said, he was a former cop before he turned to a bounty hunter. He very much has a strong moral compass, which kind of was the reason he left to be a the bounty hunter because
Bounty compass.
Bounty cop.
bounty compass.
Yeah,
Yes.
bounty cop.
Um, yeah,
Also known as
because
a
of all the
regular cop.
corruption. Yeah, because of all the corruption and like
Yeah.
the police. Um, so he just has like the probably the most interesting story to me. Um, and yeah, like I said, Bayou Billingsley, I probably mispronounced that. His performance as Jet pretty much sells it for me.
Yeah. One
It's like
thing
I feel like I could probably just equate him to Jet, just like I could equate Steve Bloom to Spike.
it was one of those things where like I looked up the voice actor like and I saw a picture. I'm like, yeah, that's who I imagined actually has this voice. He's a very
Yeah,
he's a former army dude, like very big black dude. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Uh, but what one thing I like about Jet is like every time it's like an episode centered around him, it goes very much into like an old noir like film detective type story, which is very like 90s and 80s. Because like Spikes are a bit more like laid back, but and Faye's are we'll get to her, but like very different as well. Hers is always like there is a crime or there is a mystery that I have to go, and it's very much like, oh, well, I have to figure out who betrayed me and can I trust my old partner and that type of storyline. So that's always like interesting to see, especially that like that's a very Western like American kind of storyline, and to see it done incredibly well in like a very Japanese like Eastern like art form has always been very interesting to me.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
I guess it's a good time to kind of bring this up. Is that when I was doing some research, there was a lot of like Western movie influences for like Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
Like there's like just a lot of like I guess what the video I was watching was talking about was like a lot of spaghetti western type of stuff, and even like some space stuff like Star Trek or like Alien even had like some influence on Bebop.
I'm not surprised at
So
all
like
that. Yeah.
they didn't take as much Eastern influence in it as you might think.
Oh no, I'm not surprised at all. After watching this show, that's like, it doesn't surprise me at all that you know, especially a show with the name Cowboy in it, took a lot from spaghetti westerns. The fact that it's about bounty hunters and a lot of these things about shootouts and corruption and all this. We'll meet at noon and then have a kick fight. It's
Here's the sweetest target.
yeah, it's a very much is like Clint Eastwood style of movies. But that's kind of what it works is because it doesn't look like most other animes, and that's what makes it stand out because of that storytelling. Um, and yeah, Jet is real like he really fits that character and very much brings the detective aspects onto it. Like, have you gathered your thoughts about your favorite or your second favorite husband wife? I almost said favorite.
uh,
I forgot you said Spike's. Yeah, Spike's your favorite dad. Yeah, just
um,
Spike's dad.
one. Spike's his dad.
wow. I feel like I'm going to I just be repeating a lot of what you guys said about him.
Yeah,
But I guess one thing I will want to talk about more once we like talk about like the characters is obviously he kind of fits in with the dad role of the crew, and I like the fact that they're all kind of it feels like they're both strangers and family at the same time.
I think I see what you mean. I know what you're getting at. Is like they're very familiar.
Like
Yeah,
y- like they're not afraid to go break off on their own, like
yeah,
they don't know each other or like have time apart, but then I kind of get the sense of like found family, with the
Yeah.
entire crew.
I think I see it again. They're very familiar with each other, but also they're aware that the other is keeping secrets, but
Yeah,
they never press about it. And they never try to
yeah. Like
they're
like
like,
Jet's definitely very aware that like Faye is keeping secrets, but like he tries not to press her too much about it.
That's another thing. And and you might agree with me, but I'm gonna bring up the live action one again. I'm sorry. But that's one thing that like I'm gonna be complaining about this freaking thing throughout the podcast. But that's what like also bothered me about the live action one is like they also try to do the found family thing and that like, oh, but they all have secrets for each other. Yeah, but like they know that in this show. They know that like, hey, like, yeah, Jet probably had or like Jet's a former cop and Spike has connections to like this like Chinese like mafia type like Yakuza.
Yakuza,
Yeah, that
Yakuza.
yeah, like a dragon like organization. And but they never press each other about it. And they're like, if you need help, I'll help you. But he's like, no, this is personal stuff. Like I trust like
Like,
they trust each other, but not they don't
well,
want to
that's
give
one
each other
thing I've
issues.
noticed about Jet is like he would kind of be the one to try and initiate those conversations and be the one to, kind of listen to everybody's problems, like but he would still not like pressure
Yeah,
them about it.
he never pushed. Yeah, I agree, and that's something that you're right. I completely agree, and that's what doesn't work in the live action one. Is in the live action one, Jet still tries to be a dad, but he's like the dad that's not angry but disappointed with you, because
Oh God.
he keeps bringing up like he keeps asking about like no secrets, no yakuza, all that. Like we need to be together, we need to be working together. We're a family, and it's just like shut that like dude, shut up. You're harshing the vibe, man. Just let us be. And because every episode had to be connected to every episode in the Netflix one, and
No wonder why it flopped.
yeah, and the crew never felt like every time like they'd be like, "Oh, we get along." It's fine. It just felt faked and forced because underneath, like, "Oh, this is just gonna be a liar reveal story," which is done in every single freaking Disney like live action original. You go back and pick like any random like Disney like young actor movie. All of them are just liar reveal stories. Promise you. Uh, and that's just what it feels like here. It's just like, yeah, we know the falling out is gonna be Jet learns the secret and is like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Versus here when it's the falling out, it's like, no, I'm just doing it because I don't want to get you guys involved. Because it's my business and I'm stubborn and I need to deal with it. Which is a way more compelling narrative. Versus again, the Netflix stuff, which is just like, no, I'm mad at you because Yakuza and all that stuff, but I'm a cop. I'm gonna move on. I think I'm gonna move on.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
I'm gonna move on from the so the third member added to the crew. Um and I'll probably say, well, Spike is my favorite. I think at least Robert can agree with me. Probably favorite design of a character. Sometimes you sometimes you just like the way they're drawn for no particular reason.
Uh,
And yeah, that's Faye Valentine, the main lady of the group, the female, voiced by Wendy Lee. And Faye's whole kind of deal is that like she acts like a femme fatale and then kind of gets herself in trouble and fucks things up. But
I was
she
gonna
has
say
a
the nephew
gambling
thing.
addiction.
and with her incredible gambling addiction and tendency to pull out her gun first in the entire group. But what I really like about Faye is she's not just a dumb bimbo. She's not just tits and butt and that's it. Like she actually does have an interesting character behind her and an interesting story about like how the fact that she doesn't have memories and how she's really from basically a different time than a lot of these people, but just has such like a very unique and strange past that she doesn't even know about. And it leads to some pretty like interesting interesting character moments. But I'll let you guys talk about it first. Robert, Faye Valentine, what are your thoughts? We've talked a lot about the
Yeah.
men, so I think it's time to talk about the females.
Yeah, with Faye, I really think she probably has like one of my favorite like character arcs pretty much in that show, if you want to call them character arcs.
Yeah,
Because like you said, she doesn't have memories of her past, so she's just really trying to make ends meet like the rest of them. Going into some minor spoilers here, part of the reason why she's like so desperate for money is to pay off like debts for like her medical stuff because her treatment was so
yeah,
expensive.
and
But
and she got
that debt was pretty much just placed on her because they were just trying to get like money out of her pretty much.
yeah,
So she pretty much was like kind of set up ever since she woke up out of like cryo sleep. So she kind of has to deal with not trusting people a lot because she was betrayed as soon as she kind of woke up.
yeah,
So that kind of it leads to her character of not really like trusting anybody to be really interesting to me. And how like she kind of tries hard to act tough and then she screws up and then needs the others for help, but it's not because oh she's like completely helpless. It's because she kind of gets herself in a situation just trying to like get what she wants out of it.
yeah,
Like she doesn't really like she's not stupid, she's from a different time. And some of that is like because she doesn't know much of like she didn't grow up in the same world that like Spike and Jet grew up in.
yeah. And it's interesting to me that like the fact that like this person who to her point of view, she woke up and basically got like immediately betrayed. Like that's all. So to her mind, that's all this world is. It's just people stabbing each other in the back because that's just all she knows. She doesn't know the rest of the world. She has to figure it out as she goes.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's kind of like it leads to a very interesting character moment when she does have to rely on other people, just specifically Jet and Spike. One thing that I do really like about the fact is that despite that you have a main lead and her being the main female lead, her and Spike are not a couple. Like they don't get together, which is something I love. The fact that two people can work together and be opposite genders and not be like, oh, they're romantically inclined. Because that's something that's very
Yeah,
yeah
that's definitely something that was a very interesting outcome because, like, you would think, main female lead, main male lead, usually they hook up, but no, like that doesn't happen. Yet, yet at the same time, it did feel like Faye did have feelings for Spike, or actually, no, it was pretty obvious she did, like towards the end of this series, but it was one sided.
yeah
And and that's also another thing that's unique about Bebop storytelling. Like I just feel like it always subverts your expectations.
hmm it's despite being made in like the 90s, it stays being an incredibly like unique show. Like
It's timeless.
it really is. Like I completely agree. And the fact that it has like a very distinct style, and you think like, oh, like it looks very 90s, that like, oh, it'd be kind of stuck back in that era, but it never feels that way. Nothing ever kind of has done what Bebop has done. And yeah, Faye is getting back to Faye. I I really
Yeah.
I've just always like she she might have one of my favorite just like arcs in like the show about just kind of figuring out who she is and learning about, hey, I don't need to go around in the world just for myself. I can learn to care about others.
Yeah, one of the scenes that like stands out to me the most with her is that she comes across a tape from when she was in high school with some of her friends, and when she was watching it, like, she couldn't personally relate to the video because of, like, what even though that was her on the tape, she was someone else than who was on in the video, and it's like, it stood out a lot to me because it's like, she sees that it's her, but it's not who she is.
Yeah. You know what's also like really interesting about that is the fact that all of that is done, and something that's kind of rare in anime and honestly just shows in general. It's a very quiet moment. There isn't a lot of like we've talked a lot about how impressive the voice acting is from everyone, but what's really impactful about scenes that you just described is the fact that it's very like it's just a character watching a tape. It's a very quiet moment, but it's still like it's the scene that very much sticks out and stands out amongst a lot of them because it's just very important for that character. So yeah, that's probably, unless anyone else had anything, I think we covered Faye fairly well. And so getting on to the last of the Bebop crew, the shortest member on the team, both in height and how long they were on there. Ed, a little Miss Edward, played by Messiah Fawn, I think is how you
It was Melissa.
Melissa. Okay, yeah, sorry.
I have the behind the voice actors page up.
Okay, I was like, I freaking wrote it down, but I think I wrote a typo there. That was my fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, Melissa Fawn as Edward, or Ed as they call him. And I think it's also important to mention that along with Ed, this character is introduced in the second show, but they also have a little corgi, which is adorable, and he's cute. But specifically with Ed was once described to me by a friend as like kind of like like the black cat of the crew, or more like the stray cat, where they just kind of show up and they're just part of the crew, and they never question why. It's not like Ed needs the money. She's just kind of a strange child and just hangs out with them. And eventually,
She just wanted to hang out with them.
that's pretty much it. And they feed her and they hang out, and then eventually she just leaves, and that's just what she is. She's a stray cat that just wanders, and at one point becomes like a main member of this like huge crew. And there's been, I don't know, I kind of like that about her, that she's just like, Ed more than any other character is just in their own world. Like they don't they I don't think they even realize that they're in life periling like danger. She never like tries to run, or she never gets scared when like guns are shooting or things are blowing up. She's just in her own world having a good time and just vibing, and that's very interesting. Becca, what are your kind of thoughts about the tech wizard Ed?
She is indeed a tech wizard, and
Yeah.
she is a monkey child. And she does a lot of there's a lot of very funny animations with Ed, and it really highlights what kind of the type of character she is. Like you said, kind of a stray cat. She's
Yeah.
very carefree in her own little world. And like I know we'll be talking about like the last like episodes, but when she left like the Bebop crew, like it I was like happy for her, but at the same time like I felt really sad.
Yeah,
And I could tell that Jet was sad to see her go as well.
it was. Oh my gosh, yeah, I almost started watching that too. Because it's one of the
Yeah.
things where it's like the crew all act like it doesn't affect them. And Ed just kind of goes forward as if just like, yeah, next adventure, that was fun, but my life is moving forward, and I'm not changing. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, but you work so well with this group, and I don't want this group to. I'll get into it in the last episode.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it after this, but it's like just stay with them, please. Every time I watch it, and it's a hard episode for me to watch.
It is.
'Cause
It's really hard because first off, her dad is a horrible person.
Correct. Like he's not. I mean, he's not like evil to people, but he's not a.
He's not evil, but like
He's not a good
he
father.
just left her he just left her behind.
Not out of like malicious intent. He just forgot he had a daughter.
I that's arguably worse.
It is.
like what if that happens again? But I guess it doesn't matter to Miss Edward because she'll just find more adventures to get herself involved in.
You're just a cat that you fed for a while and you started to like, but then ran off to its own home and went to its next house. It's just an animal that ran away almost, and it's sad.
More of an animal than Ein.
Yes. Aw, Ein. Robert, what are your thoughts on Miss Ed?
Yeah. So yeah, she's definitely probably the most eccentric of the group, if not most eccentric character in the show.
Yeah.
But that's not to mean that she's not like really, really smart. Because how they like showed that she's actually like this super genius is like in her intro because she has to like hack this big satellite to help like keep their ship from being like destroyed if I remember right. And then there's another episode where she's like playing chess against like this mastermind. Like this guy has like never lost like a game in like decades. And then she's over here like holding her own against him and just like nonchalant about it too.
Yeah.
Like she's not like egotistical about like playing against this guy. So it's like that's a part of her that is like probably interesting to me is that yeah, she's like basically a monkey, but she's also like super smart.
It's everything is just games in her mind. Like she doesn't. I don't even because I don't even think at that episode she realized what she was doing. She thought in
No.
her mind she's like, oh, I'm playing against a computer, whatever. This is fun, and she's beating like the world, like almost world's smartest person.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's a very that I feel like that character arc like has been done before, and she very much would be like, and she basically is the comic relief of the group. To be said, like she's very jokey and silly and all that. But I feel like in a lot of shows, the comic relief is just like the comic relief, and they're dumb, and then that's it. Or if they're smart, it's like without explanation. But I feel like with Ed, you never don't buy the fact that like, yeah, she can hack into this, but also like doesn't understand what shoes are. It's just like because of the way she works and the way she operates, it never feels super unrealistic. And for some reason, just the way her character, you buy it. Like
Yeah, like this is something that's like I really like about Bebop is that sometimes like you might see like a comic relief character in a show like okay, why is this person there? How do they fit with this group? And then you should be questioning that about Ed with the group. Like she sticks out like a sore thumb,
yeah,
but she fits. Like she fits perfectly. Because like you were talking about when like she eventually leaves the group, you feel that.
yeah,
You feel it being empty without her presence. Like even if she just kind of appeared, you definitely will feel her disappear.
yeah. And it's crazy. Like she's the one character that's not an adult. She's the one character that never fires a weapon or like really has like an ultimate like she doesn't care about money. She's so different from everyone else, but yet like the group kind of needs that like more like that glue that sticks them together, and I feel like that's what Ed was. Like just almost like if Jet's the moral compass, or excuse me, Ed is kind of just like I don't know what to call it, or just the glue, like just the thing that brings them together almost, whether they realize it or not, because they all despite not really liking each other, still care about Ed and like try to take care of the kid. And that kind of makes everyone feel like, I guess, what makes them feel more like a family is that they are taking care of someone. As little effort as they put into it, or
Uh,
Jet, but
without without Ed there for them to, again, kind of take care of, like, everything just kind of falls apart from there.
Yeah. And that's what leads into the last episodes, which I think we'll probably talk about it now. And after this, I'll ask about your favorite episodes, but I think it's important to talk about the ending. And well, nah, yeah. We've referenced it too many times to not talk about it. So the ending, the last, like, if you're counting Ed's,
Two
yeah, it's the last two
episodes.
episodes, unless you're also counting when Ed leaves, because that's the third episode. But because the 23rd episode finishes up Faye's storyline, the 24th finishes up Ed's storyline, and then the 25th and 26th are a two-part, the only two-parter, and it's the real folk blues, and it finishes up Spike's storyline. So throughout the series, you kind of got a reference that, like, yeah, Spike has ties to the Yakuza, and he, occasionally has references to this one woman, Julia, and this other person called Vicious, who was kind of like Spike's, like, mob brother, I guess. And
It says edgy OC.
it's
Okay.
Vicious is such an edgelord. Gosh, he is such a, and his name is Vicious. Like, you cannot get any.
You cannot get more edgy than that.
God, somehow I never came across as, like, too bad. But gosh, when you look at that character by himself, he even has a fucking, like, a freaking katana. Like, he is definitely, and he has great.
He's got the silver
Yeah,
hair,
he's
and
just such an OC.
and he looks like he's dead in the inside. Like, he makes, like, no other expressions except for, like, a very neutral expression.
His alarm clock in the morning is definitely Linkin Park. And that's how he starts his day. And then he stabs one of his servants. Because he's like, oh, I don't even feel it anymore. But yeah, Vicious is here. And this storyline, it's the end of Spike, and it's the end of the crew. Ed has left, and you, as Robert mentioned, you feel that. You feel that there's a hole. But more for Spike. Eventually, and I don't want to go by the episode bit by bit, so I'll try to kind of summarize it. But his past catches up with him, and he realizes, like, he has to kind of go back and deal with the loose ends of him leaving the Yakuza. But
the syndicate.
the syndicate, and it leads to the crew getting broken up, which it's one of, like, it's such a hard thing to watch. It's such a hard thing to watch. Like, it's
such a tone shift
Yeah.
from the rest of the series.
It's so beautiful and well done, and I love it. And it's one of my favorite endings ever, but also one of my least favorites, because I love this crew and I want them to stay together. But the storyline is done so well, and it makes so much sense for all these characters to make the decisions they're making. And I want to cry about it right now, just talking about it. So I'm gonna switch it over to you guys. Becca, tell me about the ending.
Oh, like, I was crying my eyes out. Like it's ambiguous if Spike actually, died or not, but still, just it felt like, to me, he probably did.
He got shot multiple times and thrown out of the building. Yeah,
like,
this isn't like an anime where it's like, oh, I have superheroes and, like, the power of friendship.
No,
down to earth anime. If you get shot, you get shot. I don't think he made it out. I think it's very kind of
no. Like, when he collapsed, like, I could, like, I'm even feeling the tears right now. Like, it again, like, the last few episodes are such a different, like, tone shift, but it works so well again, I love it, but I hate it because I just wanted them all to be happy.
Yeah. It's you want this crew to be like, no, we are, and like join together and be great together, but it's like that's not where these characters like are meant to go. I hear you sniffling thinking about the crying right now. But that's not where these characters are like supposed to go, and that's not where their journey leads. Like their lives all lead in different directions, and it's just kind of it's one of those things where it's like it was a fun ride, but every ride and every journey has to come to an end, and this then just ended with a lot of blood and bullets and gunshot. Robert, what are your kind of thoughts about the ending while I collect myself?
Yeah. For me, there's like a few scenes in particular that like really stand out. Probably the biggest for me is before Spike goes on like his last raid on the Syndicate headquarters, where like Faye tries to stop him, and he pretty much just goes up to her like, I lost an eye. It's like my left eye is in the past, and my right eye is in the present. Like that line is so freaking raw.
Yes, so good.
Like just the delivery on that is fantastic because it really just kind of it tells you everything you need to know about his headspace.
Yeah.
Like this is a man so stuck in his past that he's been trying to run away from, but also like can't run away from,
Yeah.
and he's finally about to confront the thing he's
And,
been running away from for all these years.
and what's tragic is it's that very past that he's ran away from that ultimately kills him.
Yeah.
Mm.
The fact that like he can't let go. But there's so many times where they're just like, just let go, just go live your life, just go put it behind you and don't look back. But like with that line, it's like I can't. My eye is still back there. I can't not look back. I have to.
Yeah, and a lot of that was kind of spurred on from like the episode before the last one where he meets up with Julia again finally in that graveyard where they were supposed to meet all those years ago, only for it to be a trap from the syndicate and then her Julia to be killed during that. I think that's what kind of gets Spike to finally like go, okay, I can't run from this anymore.
Yeah.
Like his link to the past is pretty much like gone now. Like the thing to like keep him running away and trying to avoid it, he can't anymore. Like he has to face Vicious.
And there's such cool just like visual imagery with that as well, and the fact like with the whole Vicious pointing the sword down at him and Spike pointing the gun back at him against like the church. It's so there's a lot of like visual storytelling about them being complete opposites, and I think Vision Vicious really represents like at least in Spike's eyes what he would have been if he didn't leave, if he didn't try to run. He would just be this thing that Spike ultimately always never wanted to be and never wanted to fully commit is Vicious, who's just like who really doesn't care about anything. He just wants everything to be his way, and he's just almost like more force of nature. And everything that Spike has done or tries to do for the Syndicate, tries to do for Julia, Vicious just comes in and is just like, no, this I am I am so fed up with you. Every action that I take from now until I'm dead will be to fuck over Spike Spiegel. And
Mhm.
I don't know. It works, and it's one of those things where I'll say it a million times. I want this crew to keep going, and I've always thought like, oh, I wish this show like, I wish it was longer. I wish it had a second season. I wish there were more episodes about it. But I'm like, no, this ending has to be here. It has to end here to make it perfect. Like maybe you could do more in the middle, but in reality, you're just dragging it out. There is no like sunset. There is no happy ending for these characters. This kind of has to be where it ends. Um, gosh, but on a less sour note, that does not have to be where the podcast ends. Because other than the last episode, which I like that we did talk about it, let's talk about the middle. what most anime would probably most people would categorize like how these episodes are structured as almost filler, like they have nothing to do with the main plot. That's just what Cowboy Bebop is. So I'll ask you guys, and I'll start with Robert. What kind of are in the last episode? What is like your favorite episode from
I
the?
think I think my favorite episode in the series is probably episode 10, Ganymede Elegy, which it's the episode about kind of Jet's backstory with his ex-girlfriend Elisa.
Mhm.
Um, I I pretty much just like how you really get to see what he was like before he was in the Bebop. You kind of hear about his life beforehand, um, where he was in a relationship, but she wasn't very happy, and he wasn't really like fully, I guess, aware of why she left
Yeah.
because he wasn't really there enough.
Hmm.
Um, and it's an episode really about being stuck in the past and eventually letting go. Symbolized by this stopwatch that he has, because when she left him, his saying was, "I'll give it till this watch stops for her to tell me why she left.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just move on with my life." And when the watch stopped, he did what he said. He went off to a different planet, and started being a bounty hunter. But him holding on to that stopwatch was almost symbolic of he didn't really move on.
Yeah.
Time pretty much was kind of stopped for him until the confrontation with Elisa and her boyfriend Wright. Um, because he had like this big bounty on his head from taking down a loan shark that Elisa borrowed money from. So like Jet pretty much got tipped off by one of his old like cop friends that to Spike that this was the target, and then Spike gave it to, or at least told Jet about it, and Jet kind of he let Jet take over the bounty,
Yeah.
and it was just a lot of like development really for like Jet, and for him to kind of through like chasing them down and having that confrontation at the end, that time does move on. Like time for Elisa never stops, and she left, unlike Jet. So him kind of learning that lesson was just resonated a lot just to me in general. And I like that with like when the episode ends, he ends up just tossing the stopwatch in the water.
Yeah.
Like that symbolizes like he's finally able to let go and move on with his life. And I thought it's such like a small thing, but it's really powerful with just the imagery of that.
Yeah.
It's like he doesn't have to outwardly say, "All right, I'm going to move on now." It's implied through his action there.
It's that episode is like it's super. It very much like encapsulates Jet's character as a whole. He's very old fashioned. He likes everything to be a certain way. He wants to be in control of everything. And the whole like point of this episode is just like he just doesn't understand why they left, and ultimately I think throwing the stopwatch away kind of realized that it's like at a certain point it's out of his hands. It's done. He can't control it anymore. So it's definitely a good episode, and for his character and what it means for his growth of be it eventually saying like, hey, occasionally you have to let people go. You can't control the world, and you just gotta go with the flow.
Yeah, it's kind of the episode that solidified like, okay, I think Jet's my favorite character.
Uh, Becca, other than the last episode, what is your favorite episode from the show?
This was a pretty difficult choice, but I think I would have to go with session 15, My Funny Valentine. Um, because like since the third episode, Faye was a bit of a mystery, and she shows up, uh she wants to earn money, and didn't really know why until like she tells Ayn her backstory. she doesn't want to go and tell the others. She wants to
Yeah.
tell the dog, who doesn't know what she's even talking about. But
Ein's the goodest boy on the whole ship, so he'll keep the
he
secret.
is, yes. But what I find tragic about her backstory, I think Faye's backstory is probably the most tragic out of everybody's, is it was not only the fact that she acquired debt when she woke up from her cryogenic state, but the fact that the debt of her boyfriend that died, like, was also accumulated by Faye.
Yeah. This is the episode when we were talking about like what why Faye was like a very interesting character outside of just like, oh, she's an attractive female. This is the episode where we get a lot of that. When this is the episode where we finally see her past and learn about her character. And that's, yeah, I agree. It's, again, both these episodes that you guys mentioned, it's very character focused. Like, there's not like huge action set pieces and everything. What's the most interesting part about the show is just when these characters are just living their lives and are talking about what led them to this moment in their life. So yeah.
Yeah, like even though I really enjoy the structure of Bebop, I still enjoy the more character-driven episodes the most.
Of course.
Mm.
So, for my favorite episode, I'm gonna cheat because this is my podcast and I can.
You're gonna cheat.
Yes, it's my podcast and I'm gonna rule. Because my favorite thing from Cowboy Bebop, and probably what I would tell people, like if you're on the fence about it, maybe start with this first. Is Cowboy Bebop the movie? Is probably my favorite because all it is a Cowboy Bebop episode except longer, and that's all I want. It's just in a movie structure.
It's great.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It has some of my favorite lines from Spike of just like, I gotta take a moment and do the voice. Like, I love a kind of woman
I
that will
enjoy.
just kill me. And that's such like,
No, that will kick my ass, I
that'll
think
just
is what
kick
he
my
said.
ass, yeah. And that could be such a corny line coming from any other character, but gosh dang it, from Steve Blum, that's such a cool line. And and then that fight scene is amazing. It's choreographed super well. And the movie, it is nothing special in the sense of just like, it is just another adventure for these guys. It has a really cool and interesting villain. And gosh, it's just Cowboy Bebop, but longer. That opening scene when they're in the shop and it's getting robbed and Spike just walks in with his headphones in, not a care in the world, like nothing's happening. And then they're just yelling at him, and then he just takes everyone out, like with no care, with pops and candy and random things. And then at the last moment, when he's like, I have a hostage, he just takes the gun and shoots right past him. And then the woman's like, what are you? Just a humble bounty hunter, ma'am. And I'm like, God, he's so freaking cool. He's so cool, and I'm sorry that that's like half of my commentary about Spike is that he's just so cool, but that's what he is, and that he just has some of the most badass moments in this movie. So yeah, if you're like if you're on the fence and you've listened to an hour or over an hour of us talking about Cowboy Bebop, yeah, go watch it, but if you need something to convince you even more than listening to an hour podcast about this show, just watch that opening scene and tell me that that is not some of the coolest animation you've seen. If you guys have seen the movie, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. What are your thoughts about the movie? And I'll give an actual episode after this to be fair to the rules that I made up. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts about the Cowboy Bebop movie?
I'll let Becca go first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like you said, it's another Bebop episode. Like one of my friends said to make sure to watch the movie. I think he said it specifically took place and between like certain episodes, like, but in the end, that doesn't really even matter. And I ended up just enjoying that. It was just like a really fun, like basically extended episode of Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
And that fits in perfectly, as you would think like an anime series getting a movie would mean that it would be like more story driven or more like character focused, but no, like yet again, um yet again, Cowboy Bebop subverted my expectations.
It's just it just fits so well with the rest of the series. And other than the fact that like yeah, there's more fight scenes and there's a bit more of like a set piece like in the end, you wouldn't like really ever think like, oh, this is like a big like that this is a movie. I'm sure like this could have been a shorter script and just been a decent episode, but they're like, no, let's stretch this out and make this the movie. I don't know like how the original plot was, but it just fits very well in this world, and it's just longer and with more cool lines and cool scenes. Roro, what about you? The Cowboy Bebop movie. I wish it had a better
Yeah.
title. That's my one issue with it.
Yeah, no, what I kind of think of about that movie is just it feels like one more adventure of the crew.
Yeah.
Like, it's just nice to get to spend time with everybody again. Everybody's back together for one more adventure. And when this takes place, I don't know, but it doesn't matter when it takes place. It's what matters is that you get to see everybody again. It's like after watching the series over, it's kind of a nice way to end the series if you don't want to just end of the downer.
Yeah.
Um, it's nice just to think, oh yeah, one more adventure. Not that the ending doesn't matter, but it's like it's it's a happier way to kind of send off the series is just like a little vignette where everybody goes and does their thing. Um, yeah, I think overall, even like the plot of the movie isn't like the most like oh my gosh, this is the deepest thing ever. It's just another fun adventure.
Yeah.
I've pretty much made an overly elaborate way to say it's just a fun adventure.
It's just another good time. It definitely is. Um, so to give a real episode though, I guess is like my favorite. I'd probably honestly have to say a little episode 19, track 19, Wild Horses, which all it is just Jet needs a ship repaired, and he goes to these two like mechanics, designers, and they just have a little adventure. And again, it's the same reason I like the movie, which I know isn't the best answer, but it's just Spike. I think I said Jet earlier. I meant Spike. It's just Spike
Yeah.
doing his thing. It's just Spike being cool and just having a fun adventure with like the spaceship. And I will talk all in all about how interesting and like diverse these characters are and how story driven they are. But every time I think about like my favorite episodes, I'm just like I just like it when he's just getting his ship repaired and just living his life. And those are the episodes where I'm just like I just had a smile on my face the whole time. And then of course the main reason that I'm picking this is because there's a scene at the end where he lights a cigarette and he's like everything will be all right, just whatever, as he's like falling down to earth and is about to crash. No,
Like what happens, happens.
whatever happens happens. It's just like this, it's just such a vibe. And that's it's a very comfort, like it's not big drama, there's not like a huge emotional input, but like it's just like it's a good message for this thing of just like life will just move on, just go with the flow. And that's
Yeah, and
such
it also plays into his character really
yeah.
well of like again, him just kind of being averse to everything, like you said.
I love it. All right. But I believe that is that's it. And one more thing. I hope I forgot to mention this when we were talking about Edward. But again, the live action series. What the issue with
Oh
that?
no.
Yeah, the issue with that is so there's something that doesn't make sense with me with the live action series. And yeah, I kind of got to end this on a sour note, but like the issue with that is again they try to do everything in the show would also have a complete narrative, but at no point is Ed there. They don't ever get him until the very end when Spike is not dead, but already like dealt with the whole like vicious scenario and the crew's all been broken up and like so you've done all the iconic you've done them wrong and you've done them in a weird order and like not how the actual show did it so it didn't have as much impact, but you've done the iconic moments from the show and then you introduce the fourth character. Like
It's like, where was she for the rest of this?
where the and this is also not where you're supposed to meet her, and she was supposed to help in those previous adventures. So like it's one of those things with the show where, and I should have brought it up when like we were talking about Ed, but it's just like what do you do now? Like it kind of sets up for a second season, but I'm like, how would you do a second season? What would you do? You make up material because the stuff you already made up wasn't good. So like I don't know what they were expecting from that of just like, oh, a little post credit scene of here's Ed. I'm like, okay, great. What would that lead to? There is there isn't like another manga or another season where you can pull more material from. You would just have to like make stuff up at that point. And everything you would do would just probably not be as good as the original. So that's probably my last like little gripe about how just the Netflix show just doesn't get it. It just doesn't capture the vibe of the original, and that's the issue. With all like on top of a lot of other things. So I don't know. All right, talked a lot about it, and now for the listening, is there any other closing thoughts about the show that I didn't mention? And if it's no, then it's no. We've talked a lot about. But Robert, anything that I didn't bring up or that you also had in your notes that you didn't get to talk about?
I think we pretty much covered
Yeah.
everything I wanted to. I'm just gonna say, if you haven't watched Bebop, it's worth a shot.
Yeah. If you haven't watched Bebop,
Just
but
come
watch
in with an open mind.
yeah.
Come in with just take it in. Just take in the show.
Don't expect it to be like something else. It's
Yeah.
Bebop is Bebop, and there is no anime like it. And everything that ever tries to be like it just doesn't do as well.
Nope.
But Becca, any closing thoughts about Cowboy Bebop? We've covered a bunch.
I don't think I have anything else to say.
All right. Well, how we and I hope Robert prepared you about this because I realized I didn't tell you about this part. But how we actually end all these shows is doing a fresh pick of the week where we just talk about whether video game, movie, or whatever that we've been playing. It doesn't have to be new. It just has to be something that you have been enjoying this past week when we're not recording these podcast episodes. To go first and to kind of keep the anime theme because we don't talk about anime a lot. Well, Robert does, but you know that's because he's a nerd. I'm joking.
So it takes one to know one.
I was waiting for the comeback. I gave you a pause for a moment.
I had to take my 4th grade comeback book out.
Yeah, shoot. I wrote this down. I gotta find it real quick. My fresh pick will be an anime, and there is already one season of this, but season 2 is coming out every Monday. I haven't watched the latest one as the time of this recording, but that is Vinland Saga. It is a anime originally done by Wit Studios, but the latest season is done by Mappa because Mappa does everything. And it is an anime about Vikings, which is something I'm super into because Norse mythology is really interesting to me in Viking culture. And the fact that it's anime based is very interesting because they have basically nothing to do with each other. But the character of like Torfine is super interesting. This kid who his father died and then was adopted by essentially the guy that killed his father, and his quest for revenge. It's super interesting. It has very diverse characters and really gorgeous backgrounds as well. I feel like that's a thing that isn't talked a lot about in anime, but like the backgrounds of just like the islands of Norway and then England are really pretty to look at. But it's got really fun action, but also some really fun and like unique characters and just very fun character moments. I will say season two, while it's not a bad thing for me, I know a lot of people complain, is very less action based. That so far we are 6 episodes in, and there has barely been a fight scene. But that's kind of to its benefit, and the second season is very much more like looking at the psychological damage of our main character and just like what he's going through, and it's very much taking its time, which is a good thing, and I'm okay with that. So definitely, it's on Netflix right now. I think I originally watched like the first season on Amazon Prime, but I think Netflix now kind of is going to be the ones that, unless you just have Crunchyroll. Um, but if you don't, then that's a good way to watch. But yeah, Vinland Saga will be my fresh pick of the week. Robert, what about you? What have you been
So
playing?
my fresh pick is a game I just finished a few days ago, which is Fire Emblem Engage.
Hmm.
It's the newest Fire Emblem game that came out, which for those who don't know, it's a turn-based strategy RPG, where one of the main like gimmicks or draws to it is that characters who die are no longer usable.
Hmm.
And kind of what Engage brings to the table for this game is something called the Emblem Ring system, where you can give someone a ring that gives you like a unit or a character from a previous game, like Marth, Roy, Ike, or Lucina, and that character with the ring equipped gets like benefits based off of that character's strength. So, like, when you equip these rings, you can do things that you wouldn't normally get to do in other Fire Emblem games. Like, if you equip Ike's ring, for example, you can use his Great Aether skill, which means if you take a unit and you like move them ahead of the crowd and you do Great Aether, you can attract all the enemies to like attack them, and they take less damage in that state. And then the next turn, you will do like a lot of damage to enemies in that area, and then you could take the rest of your army and come in and like clean up the enemies and basically keep a lot of your units safer. And that's only one of the more like simple strategies. You can do some really creative things if you like take the time to learn the system, but it's also just really easy and intuitive to use. And it's not like really overpowered either.
Hmm.
Like um, it's something that was really well thought out, and, like, on paper, you think, "Oh, man, I could do this, and it's extremely broken." But you have to, like, really plan out something to get something that's like, "Oh, I'm gonna clear a map in 1 turn." But otherwise, like, the combat's really well balanced, and if you're not careful with, like, unit positioning, you might just lose someone in a turn just due to bad positioning. And, like, the only way you really get broken is if you just level grind. So, like, overall, I think it's a really, like, polished Fire Emblem game. I think that anybody who's, like, interested in Fire Emblem, like, if they've heard of the games and played them before, they will really like it. If you're new to the series, I think there is something still to enjoy, but some of the Emblem Ring stuff might be lost because there's a lot of references to, like, previous games, but the main story in of itself is pretty standalone.
Hmm.
And it's not, like, terribly long for an RPG. It's longer than some of the normal Fire Emblem games, but I finished it in about 40 hours or so, doing like a lot of the side missions. So if you just kind of focus the story, you could probably finish it in about 25-30 hours, I think.
How would you, quick question, how would you like compare it to like other Fire Emblem games like that you've played before? Does it kind of rank a bit higher, or is it kind of just mid or even like lower?
It's not it's on the higher end for me personally. Um, my favorite in the series is Fire Emblem Awakening. I think that one gets absurdly broken, but the story, soundtrack, character, variety, all that really like appealed to me.
Hmm.
And Engage does have a lot of that, and it doesn't like speak to me as much as Awakening did, but it's kind of one of those first game biases, right?
Yeah.
Where like the first game you play in a series might be your favorite, even if like some of the others might be like objectively better or more polished,
Hmm.
you still might have like your bias. And I think that's kind of my like thing with Engage is that I think it's really, really good. And I think it's worth playing for anybody that is a fan of the series. But it doesn't hold up to Awakening just because that game is so like near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right. Well, Becca, your turn. You're on the spot.
Um, all right. So I was going to pick Fire Emblem Engage, but
You can have. You don't need to pick that, but
no. I am going to pick Kirby Planet Robobot. Um, I've been playing that through totally legal means
makes
as
sense.
of late.
Makes sense.
On your
Um,
Nintendo personal computer.
I wouldn't
yes,
doubt you any other way. Yeah.
right. But
The first podcast is
it,
not support or stealing of any type of copyright
it
things. Yeah.
it's it's pretty much like every other Kirby game except there's mechs. No, but seriously,
It's
I
anime.
do. But no, Kirby gets a mech sometimes, and he can also copy abilities in it. So you can copy like a sword ability, and he's got big blade arms, or sometimes you can copy the wheel ability. The mech turns into a car, and there's overall this like sci-fi aesthetic in every single world, and it still manages to fit in with the series. It's just a really comfy time.
Kirby is such like a. It's just a feel good, fun game. Like I
Yeah.
I played as a kid, and like I've even like gone back to like my old copy, like even now that I'm much older, just like it's just a fun like feel good game. And I imagine adding mechs to it is just more of the same, of just still just a good time.
Yeah. Like Kirby games aren't inherently like challenging or complex, but I just like them just for a chill time.
It's a vibe. It's a different type of vibe than Bebop, but it's definitely a vibe. Yeah, a little low
Mhm.
stress. So, but that is everything for this episode. I want to thank Becca for joining us for the first time on this episode. Thank you. And Robert,
Thanks for having me.
I was waiting for the response. Oh, awkward. And Robert, thanks as always for coming on, talking about some
Yeah,
anime.
yeah, I definitely enjoy doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, and thank you to everyone else that stayed in and listened for this long. Have a good time. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time, Space Cowboy.